E-L-O-E-J, a little aloha in our day. Spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Poncho Man, welcome everybody back to Breakfast with Bob. Not quite Kona edition. We are brought to you by Hoka One One, by Master Spas, Clash Endurance, UCAN, Hyper Ice, Premium Plus Sports, Form Smart Swim Goggles, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. We sent out 3,038 grants totaling $5.1 million during a COVID time to keep athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest is seriously one of our favorite people on the planet. He has the most diverse background of any athlete we interview. 2004 Olympic rower. I don't think there's any professional triathlete who's ridden in the Giro and the Vuelta. He's won Ironman Italy, fifth in Kona 2019. He's cycling on Team INEOS. Just broke the course record and won Ironman Copenhagen. Mr. Cam Wurf joins us. How you doing, Cam?
Good, thanks, Bob. Yes, yeah. Wow, thanks for the introduction. Always makes me blush, and yeah, there's nothing quite like catching up with you to boost the morale, especially as we hit the depths of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Hey, so let's talk about Copenhagen, because you're on Team INEOS. You had a lot of guys coming off of 2020 Olympics. Multiple gold medals and bronze for Rohan Dennis. So you were probably chomping at the bit to go race somewhere. When did you decide Copenhagen was going to be it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I mean, yeah, watching all your teammates succeed and their success and not only that, but, okay, I guess in the case of Tom Peacock, for example, I was training with him, up until the day he left to go there. So, and someone like him, would sort of say, oh, you look like you're in pretty good shape, and, you must be getting excited about Kona, which at that time it was an important building preparation, block in for the summer for me before I went back and did a little bit more bike racing before then, building up for Kona. And yeah, so of course, seeing them then compete at the Olympics and all that success, I thought, well, far out, I'm probably actually in pretty decent shape. Maybe I should look to do an Ironman, because obviously at that point I didn't necessarily need to do one. Yeah, it was the case of looking at the calendar, looking at who'd be racing where, and Frankfurt and Copenhagen were kind of the two options. And yeah, I mean, obviously Lionel's a good benchmark. That's one great thing about Lionel. He's a pretty consistent performer over a number of years, particularly in, cooler conditions and all of that. And so I thought, well, it's a good challenge, as far as seeing a challenge, I saw more of a challenge there than Frankfurt's field, for example. I'd raced David McNamee a few weeks prior to that at the Andorra half, and, I didn't have much trouble beating him with, having done very little training. So I felt like Lionel was perhaps the bigger test. That was the reason to choose Copenhagen. So that was why I went along there and see where I was at, and and then obviously that was meant to be a bit of a see where we're at, and then improve for Kona. But the rest of the season never happened.
And what's interesting is Lionel being up there in the swim, right? That sort of changes the game when you come out of water and Lionel's right there. That's not necessarily where you want that guy to be, right?
Well, I don't think it really matters, where he is, because yeah, he's good, but there's obviously guys that have much bigger weapons than him in the sport. So where Lionel comes out of the water or whatever is I guess largely irrelevant. At the end of the day, you still got to ride quicker and run faster than him, and so a minute or two here or there, it makes little to no difference, really. No, I wouldn't think. I mean, it might help him. It might help him feel like he's more part of the race and give him a little bit more confidence being further up there than he's somewhat maybe used to being. But he's had a hell of a lot of success coming from behind, and I mean, I'm not sure. He's run he did. He won St. George, was it? The half. I don't think he won an Ironman this year though. So, it's not like, I guess, overall performance wise, it's actually changed much for him. Having said that, he's also raced some good guys. He took on Jan. He obviously, I don't know if I'm a very good benchmark, but he raced me and he raced Gustav. And, maybe if he'd raced some other, well, he raced also in Chattanooga and, Joe Skipper, and was quite a ways ahead too. So, I think it's great that he's improved, but I guess he's also learning that it maybe isn't the be all and end all to overall performance, because he's probably had better races when his swim wasn't as good.
Well, it's fascinating because I remember interviewing you with Tri Club a couple of years ago, and you were saying that with Lionel, like with the other guys, you obviously, your weapon is the bike, and you've gotten better at everything else. But Lionel, you didn't feel like Lionel had that one great part of his sport. He was a really good cyclist, not a great cyclist, and a really, a runner at that point. He certainly improved his running and his swimming since. Do you still feel that way, that it's going to be really difficult for him without that one weapon?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously it looks like in the sport, unless you've got a weapon now, it's hard to stand out and hard to distance yourself from, that main group. I like myself, our swim's never going to be our weapon. In the bike, there's some really strong cyclists, in the sport now. And, I guess in the last 4 or 5 years since I came along has been the biggest change in the sport. That, well, particularly the last 2 or 3 years when I've started running fast, everyone's realized, wait a minute, we are going to have to learn to ride quicker and still run just as quick, which is great. The sport's been very good at adapting to what I've done. And now you've got the Norwegians and Patrick that have, Langer, that have come in and started dropping 2:30 marathons, off the back of, relatively strong bike rides. So, yeah, I mean, with all due respect to Lionel, he sort of, as far as at the top of any of those categories, he's not really there. But he's exceptionally good at all three. And if you have a bad day or you're not on it, he's going to get you. So, he's definitely a threat. He's a threat every time he races. And like I said, being able to go against him in Copenhagen was great for me, because it just was a great benchmark, because the guy's always very good, and it gives you a good idea of where you're at. So obviously gave me a lot of confidence heading towards Kona, but we never got there. So I have to wait another year.
So you go 4:02 on the bike, you have a 6.5 minute lead off the bike, and you end up breaking the course record by 3 minutes, and then obviously Kona gets canceled. So knowing that Kona is not happening, wasn't going to be happening in February or this, obviously in October, how has that changed things for you? What are you working on now?
Yeah, I mean, that race as well. I mean, I guess I kicked myself a bit, because I obviously could have probably gone quite a bit quicker on the run. But, I just watched Elliot, Kipchoge. I'm still training, the Nike guy, the group that work with me still work with him. So I was very up to date with what was going on, in the build up to the Olympics. And we did some similar simulation stuff, the heat and whatever. They worked on with me too, which was great. And watching him, the way he kicked away in that last sort of 5-10K, I don't want to sound like an arrogant, but I was sort of wanting them to come at me a bit. That was why I was quite controlled, because I wanted to do that. I love watching him just go whack and just drop them, and I thought, right, Lionel, you get within 30 seconds and then you're just going to find out, that I can run. And in the end, I think he got within around a minute, and I only had 4K left. So I was sort of running out of time to do any sort of kick. So, to be able to stretch that lead out to nearly 4 minutes by the line, I think showed that, I had quite a lot left in the tank. So, so that was great. But also with the fact that Kona then got cancelled, I was a bit annoyed that I didn't really get to test what was going on. So, so I guess it's just a case now of, of waiting to see. I mean, it went to February, and now it's been cancelled. And, I went back, luckily riding with the cycling team, I was able to get back in the rotation for the end of season races, do some bike races. And then now, we're taking the opportunity where there's no bike racing on to do a good running block and to keep progressing that, because I think that is something I've improved a lot over the last 2 years. and now we're building up to the Sacramento Marathon, which is next weekend, just to run a flat marathon and see what that's like. So I'm looking forward to that, and then I'm straight on the plane after that and back to Europe, and we've got our first team camp. Start planning for 2022 back in Mallorca. So it's all systems go. No off season for triathletes.
So would you do both of the Ironman World Championships next year, with St. George being so early in May and then Kona in October?
Well, firstly, I need to qualify for Kona. I'm in a bit of a unique position that I haven't been in for a while. I've normally always qualified. So, I qualified.
Didn't you? But I thought you qualified when Italy, and then you just won Copenhagen.
Yeah, but they apparently were for both the same one. So,
so you got to do another one. I thought you were in for both.
Do another one. No. I mean, I felt that. Well, I just assumed it was a bit like the age groupers. We could either defer, or they were sort of saying you do both. You qualify for Kona, you want to go to Kona. Personally for me, the one in May is obviously not the greatest of timing. I've committed to the cycling team, and I'm one of 31 riders, and that is a very, very busy time of the season. You've got the classics period that is sort of just finishing. You've got the Giro, starting, and all the build-up races for that, and you've also got the the preparation part for the Tour de France. So while I don't envisage doing either the Giro or the Tour, perhaps the Giro might happen. I'll certainly be needed in amongst all that to fill in and fill some gaps and do some racing myself. So I think it would be pretty arrogant of me to think that I could be cycling and traveling around doing that and rock up to a race in May against all the best guys in the sport and feel like I could be competitive. So I'll focus on qualifying. Obviously, when I get a chance, when I get a chance to race in the first part of the year, that'll be the most important thing. And then build up for Kona again, assuming I qualify.
You had an opportunity to be with Gustav down at Ironman Florida. You just did the swim and the bike. It sounds like you were sick probably going into that.
Yeah, I'm really not sure what happened. I woke up that morning and definitely felt a little bit off, but you just take a few paracetamol and get on with it. And I got out. I had a great start to the swim. I was bleeding for a lot of it, and then Gustav I saw him in his gold cap, so I sort of thought, okay, I'll just sit on you, and noticed the pace dropped off quite a bit. I don't know if that because I was there and they sort of didn't want to be towing me around, but then Lionel and all the other guys caught up as well, so it was a bit of a pedestrian swim. And then on the way back to the beach the last time, Justin Metzler and Gustav and Robert, we stretched it out and we got a good gap. It was nice to, I was confident my swim had improved quite a bit, and it was good to see that we were able to quite easily drop, Lionel and the other guys when the pace actually really came on. We had 20, 30 seconds by the time we got to the beach, just in that last little, few hundred meters. And so that was good. And really that was all I saw of Gustav. I ran to transition with him, had a quick hello, and I got on the bike, and I sort of felt pretty flat at that point. And 40, 50K later, I was on the side of the road, quite unwell. And, it's one thing and as you know, I've had some moments in the run over the years and still been able to Port Macquarie, obviously, and been a bit crooked, still been able to pull it together and win the race. But in this case, when that happens early on the bike, that's a long day. And I was there to race. I wasn't there to participate. And if I couldn't be up there with those guys, then I decided I'd just go home and get ready for my marathon. So it was just one race too many for the year.
When you look at Gustav, gets off the bike and goes 2:34 and goes 7:42, and then you've got then you see what Christian did at Cozumel. Obviously, the swim is current aided, so 39:41, but 4:02 bike, 2:34 marathon. These are times that are obviously it's not Kona, but those are still times that make you sit up and take notice. When you look at those two guys, when you're racing, Those are two guys you obviously have to be concerned about now.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, to be honest, I've been surprised that knowing the lack of running ability that I have, knowing I'm very novice, and the fact that I've run 2:45, I've been surprised that we haven't seen those running times from guys over the past years. But I guess it just shows, how much the bike takes out of guys. It's like, look at a Tyler Butterfield. He's run a 2:19 flat marathon.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever broken. Maybe I'm a huge fan of Tyler, but maybe just under 2:40. Maybe, I'm not sure, but definitely not. He hasn't run a 2:30 or anything, which you would think is well within that guy's wheelhouse. So yeah, I mean, it's so great to see that they've finally broken that mold, and I expect to now see a lot more people doing the same thing. And I guess in some ways, not as spectacularly as them, because they've gone out and won. Having said that, I won a race my first year, but with what I did with the bike, it was a 10, 15-minute shift, year on year from what was happening before. And then all of a sudden, everyone very quickly, adapted to that. And, and we saw how spectacular Jan was in Kona in 19. So I would expect that, a lot of guys will react, and I think we'll see, I think we'll see a lot of competitiveness with those guys, going into the new season. So it's just great for the sport that they've been the ones that have, moved the goalposts.
I love it. And so when I remember the first time we met was, I think it was 2015 Kona. Was Kona 2015 your first one?
Yeah,
after winning Whistler and foot. With the 30-34, and Tim Reed was like, "Hey, you should interview my friend. He's a pro cyclist, but he's got a broken foot, so he qualified, but he's just gonna go out there and see how far he can get." And you were like, "Hey, if Tim Reed can be good at this sport, anybody can."
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But
it's definitely a sport that rewards hard work.
But you look at where you've come from, 2015, and really you changed the game. People had to realize, okay, it's one thing if this guy can ride fast, but if he can run, then we've better figure out how to ride faster, because that's been the biggest change in the last number of years. Is people were riding 4:15, 4:17 for 70 points. I mean, 2:17, 2:15. They weren't riding 2:02, and they weren't riding 4 hours and 4:02 for the full. Watching that and realizing the impact you had on our version of the Peloton. What are guys doing? Is it more indoor training? Is it more group work? Is it the technology? How are people going so much faster than they were not that long ago? They weren't going as fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say a lot of it is the investment in the equipment and the position. I don't think, because if you look at the overall performance of the athlete, you look at the swim times and the running times, they haven't changed so much. They've learned to adapt. No. So you would say that they're probably not that much better an athlete per se, but they're everything around that. They're exactly. I mean, equipment is a big thing. We've obviously seen, and this is obviously a delicate, topic, but a lot of people bring up. I certainly haven't in the past, but the way the dynamic of the groups work, and we're getting a lot more media coverage, and a lot of motorbikes out there, and cameras, and the way that sort of creates a bit of a vacuum, and if
sure.
guys kind of know if they can suffer just to survive to be with someone, that they might get somewhat of a cushy ride, and that's certainly, no one's breaking the rules. It's just how it's sort of evolved, right. Because if you look at when a gap does get formed finally, the gap blows out very fast. And so that would indicate that there is something going on with all that whole dynamic, when you see a group of riders all together. Guys lose significant time very quickly. I mean, in Copenhagen, I was quite fortunate because very early in the bike, we had, a section of exposure with crosswinds. and I was able to accelerate and get on my own and, ride away quite comfortably. But if you sort of don't get a moment where everyone is sort of in their own wind, so to speak, it does become much more difficult for anyone to commit the energy to blow the races apart. So, it's great. We've got the more coverage, we've got the live coverage and more motorbikes and media and all that out there, but it's definitely having an impact on the dynamics of particularly the bike leg and the speeds that some guys are riding, because you just see what happens the moment they get exposed. It's very, very different, and the pace, from race to race. So
right.
That's a big thing, and guys know it. They've studied it and they've learned how to utilize it. Yeah, they're not breaking the rules, so it is what it is.
So when you run Cal International next week up in Sacramento, do you have a specific goal that you're going to shoot for?
Well, I'd like to run quicker than I have in an Ironman. I run 2:45 usually a couple of years ago, so it'd be nice to run quicker than that. But I'll just go and see what happens. I'll start in around the 2:30 to 2:45 sort of group and see which group I find and try not to obviously get too excited at the start and see what I can do. It was more a culmination of, as far it's not sort of an objective to go and see how much I can bury myself in a flat marathon. It was more of an opportunity to do a nice little running block 4 or 5 weeks and finish with something, and then, move into the next phase being, back at the team camp, etc., and go into Christmas. So, but me, Bob, I'm a competitor. I'll run as hard as I can, and ideally, though, I'll be a little bit restrained, and hopefully, I'll be able to bring it home a bit stronger than I go out. That'd be the objective, and if I do that, I think I might surprise myself.
When you look back at your triathlon career, is there one race that sticks out to you as this was the race that told me that I could be really, really good at this? I'm always kind of looking forward. I mean, I guess it's funny that the 2 Scandinavian races I've done probably, obviously Sweden at the time had a huge, it was a huge change. It was second, go to Kona, third, you don't make it. And with the world rankings at that point. And, that was obviously very significant, but more the performance I did that day, as I rode quite well, had a good lap gap. And then that was sort of the best run I'd done to that point too. I ran just over 3 hours. I think I ran 3:01, but that was like, okay, I'm starting to get this. And then, Copenhagen, of course, we've had 2 years to think about getting ready for Kona, and I felt like I'd kept my head down and kept focused on that and improved. Well, maybe, the swim was still something we need to work on, but that's normally something we'll work on closer to the event anyway. But as far as where I was at with the bike and where I was at running, it gave me huge confidence to be able to be in the race. One thing, for example, with the run, you start to, when you start getting low on fuel or suffering, you sort of just getting through it. And whereas I noticed the whole time I was quite alert to the point where I put every gel in a rubbish bin. I actually ran off the course and actually had the time to go and put it in a bin, and think about that. Like normally you're just like a blubbering mess and there's stuff going everywhere. But I was so under control that I was able to actually really pick out the path, make sure I didn't roll an ankle once. I didn't slip on a curb. That was a race where it gave me extreme confidence leading into Kona that I could just sort of, rock up to that event and, having done a nice, block of preparation and be very controlled in putting out a high level performance and something to build on. I'd have to say those 2 races up in the Viking country that would be my 2. Well, what impressed me with Copenhagen is, being a looped run course, and, you had that lead, but, you had to play math. Right. Okay, they took out this much time out of me on that lap, but the reality is it's 1:20, it's 4K to go. They have to do this. You sort of want them to keep running hard. because you want to see where you're at, right? You want to push yourself, but at the same time, you want to win the race. So
exactly.
You almost
it was interesting because I could see them coming. I mean, you saw them a lot of times, and that was another great thing. You know, I was very clear in my mind, and I could, okay, well, they're running 2:30 pace, and okay, now you might go, okay, well, maybe they can do that. But at the time, we hadn't had a Gustav or a Christian come out, you know, and just let everyone know in the sport, hey, you know, guys, you're going to have to lift your game if you want to compete with us. So I was very confident that, you know, Lionel or Jasper or, you know, we're going to run a 2:30 marathon. So I knew at some point they were going to break. But as I said, I was sort of trying to, I mean, obviously also a bit strategic. I didn't want to get in the running race halfway through, so I wasn't going to go too slow. But I was certainly excited about potentially the last lap having a bit of a stoush, and if they kept up at that pace. But they kind of fell off it maybe a bit more than I expected. And yeah, in the end, obviously, I was able to just, you know, do it quite comfortably. But it was a big thing for me to be able to do a race like that. And I definitely have never been in a situation in a race where I've been able to win it. You know, beat someone like Lionel, and who's a very high level athlete, and obviously break the record. So yeah, that was a really good feeling that reminded me, and probably a reminder after a couple of years of not having raced one. Yeah, I'm okay at this sport, and I've improved. You know, I've done what I can through, you know, this uncertain time we've all faced, and come out of it a better athlete. So I'm really looking forward to 2022 because you know, ideally we're going to have a bit more structure. You know, races aren't going to get cancelled at the last minute. You're going to be able to plan some stuff, and I've got to go through the whole. It's a bit like the beginning again. Go through the whole, you know, qualifying routine, and that'll be a bit more of a challenge because I need to obviously carve out a time between my racing schedule on the road to. You know, I'm not going to rock up at a race for the sake thinking I'm just going to qualify. You know, I do need to do a little bit of, you know, preparation. You know, the guys now are very, very good. Yes. And if you're a bit off, you know, guys will make you pay. So carving out the right time to do that will be, you know, a bit of a challenge, but you know, the team will work with me on that. We'll find the right opportunity. So looking forward to that. And obviously I just want to get back to that big island and see where we're all at. You know, it's exciting.
So who in the peloton could be good at triathlon? Who do you see as guys that, you know, you train with who, you know what, if they jumped into our sport, they could do really well?
Yeah, you know, I was asked a bit about this the other day about crossover athletes, and you know, and they said, you know, he's really strong on the bike. You know, he should be a really good triathlete. I was like, well, we've kind of learned that really doesn't actually get you where you need to get. You need to actually be a pretty good swimmer so that you can actually use your bike, you know. So for me, the most important thing would be a good swimmer, you know, like to make sure you're in the race. I mean, I had a friend of mine from rowing, Todd Skipworth, a number of years ago. You know, he was immediately competitive because he was a national champion swimmer. You know, he probably could have gone to the Olympics in distance swimming. And so he was immediately there, and he could immediately get in the group on the bike and, you know, be in the race. And with me, you know, I had a bit of a swimming background from growing up in Australia as a kid. So, you know, I was able to, and I have the peloton mentality of fighting to be in the pack and fighting for the wheel. And, you know, I think I do that quite well and probably swim way above my pool ability, for example, you know, out in open water. And so there's, the athlete, just being a great cyclist isn't really enough. You know, we've seen Adam Hansen, I guess, maybe struggle a bit more than he expected. You know, we saw Andrew Chalansky come in and go out pretty quickly. You know, guys that have got way more credentials as being strong cyclists than myself, but they couldn't swim. You know, they couldn't do it comfortably enough to even be able to use the bike as a weapon. So, sorry to make that a long one. So to answer your question, it obviously leads to very few, and one obviously is Richie Port because he can swim, and the other one would be Victor Campenaerts, who I actually had spoke to about this at the last race of the season. We're in Milan Torino or Grand Prix. Anyway, it was one of them, Grand Prix Monte. It was the last race I did, and it was about 30K to go, and everyone was nervous and edgy. And he rolled up beside me and said, "Oh, you know, I just want to say I really follow what you do, and it's really impressive." Blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Damn, man, I follow what you do, and what you do is incredible. You're our record and how fanatical you are. And
Yeah.
he said, I really want to do triathlon. I used to be a very good swimmer, and I said, well, mate, that's the most. If you do want to do it, get in the pool now. Start planning for it. Make sure you're a good swimmer, because he was in Kona in 2018. He was there watching a friend. Like he's really, really interested, and he's an incredibly smart guy. And that was my advice to him. And he agreed. He said, these guys are strong on the bike. We think, oh yeah, you come from pro cycling, you're going to be the best. But hell no. I mean, Sebastian Kinley, obviously Jan, Sam Long, Lionel, you got a bunch of incredibly strong. I mean, I know I'm missing out a lot of guys, Christian Hogenhag, that are incredibly strong on the bike. And honestly, that type of effort, a 4-hour on a time trial bike type of effort after having to swim at threshold for 50 minutes, they are world class, and even Victor said, you're not just going to ride away from these guys and put hours into them. They're literally, he'd done some calculations, and he said he actually calculated that day with what he knew of me and what he knew, he felt I'd do around 4:10. He said, so you surprised me. You went a bit faster.
The guy surprised me. Was it Lucas Vogt? What he held on. He was a former Olympic swimmer. Took 110, 120K to catch him on the bike.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me 120K. I mean, to be honest, I knew of Lucas. I'd raced him in Italy, so I was aware that I was potentially vulnerable in the run. So once my concern was more worrying about getting rid of the rest of the guys before I worried about him. And once I got rid of Jasper and I was on my own, I was like, okay, well, I didn't even actually know where Lucas was. I was very, in the end, I was like, wow, like this is actually taking a while before I can even see him. And I sort of started to see him between towards the end of the last lap. And so then I just sort of, gave myself a bit of a break for 30K and just gradually caught him, and then obviously carried on my merry way. But he's improved a lot, because I raced him also in, as I said, in Italy, but I had a great swim that day, and I was only a couple of minutes behind, and I caught him quite quick. Whereas, I mean, he looked I've never seen swimming like that. I mean, that was just beautiful. And he was like, I think 6 minutes or so ahead of us, and we were still there in 49 minutes, so which is great. He's it shows that he realizes that can be a weapon. You look at Lucy Charles, who is, perhaps just a much more refined version of Lucas Voigt, where she uses the swim as a weapon. She's learned to ride fast, and now she can run the legs off people as well, which is exactly sort of as you'd want to see, the evolution of a top swimmer coming into the sport. Lucy is definitely the poster girl, or poster iron athlete, for a top swimmer to come in. So, I always say, that's what I say to the guys, and I'm sure there's other guys in the peloton that can swim, but I think if they can't swim competitively, the level of swimming is also so high. You're just you're never in the race. It doesn't matter how good you are on the bike. You're going to either completely destroy yourself to even get anywhere near the front, and then you won't be able to run. So,
I look at this year. I looked at the person who was probably hurt most by not having Kona. I think Lucy would have been wire to wire. I think she would have come out of the water first, rode and ran, and never seen anybody this year.
No, she seems in a league of her own, and her ability to pop and change and jump between events, it's just so inspiring. It's fantastic to see. And, we've got, if you look at cycling, we've got this modern type of cyclist. You've got a Van der Poel and a Wout van Aert and a Tom Pidcock that from weekend to weekend, they're doing different stuff and winning, and also with Lucy, she's almost, thrown out the script and gone back to the McKeely Jones and the Chris
Super
McCormick
League.
and the days where they just and Craig Alexander, where they'll just do everything and win everything, and Greg Welsh. Which is just fantastic to see, and I'm sure it makes everyone scratch their head a little bit. The Danielas, etc., thinking, "Gosh, what do we do here? Do we stay here focused on this?" And and do that, or is she picking up some weapons by doing this other stuff that is making her basically impossible to beat? Time will tell, because we haven't been able to get back to find out.
Yeah, well, the speed, it's like with Gustav and Christian. You bring that raw speed in, and you can take that across all three. You're going to be really, really tough to beat. So,
if you can't put some fatigue into those guys, then or put them make them uncomfortable at all in the first two disciplines, then I mean, to run when you're running 29 minutes or whatever they do, and running at a 3:45 pace to them is like a walk in the park. I mean, it's and that makes sense. From a physiological standpoint. As I said, I've been shocked that we haven't seen it sooner. And I admire the guys. I'm a huge fan of those guys, the Norwegians. They work their asses off. They tell you they work their asses off. They tell you they work hard, and they go out there and perform. And that's always great role models and great thing to see for the sport. Real champions you can feel like you can kind of relate to, and in that they work hard like everyone else, and very transparent. It's really great.
Cam the man, hey, thanks so much for taking time. And how's Wyatt, Fallon, everybody else doing good?
Yeah, we're good. We're here in Maryland at the moment, so with Fallon's family, and Wyatt got a little snowboard the other day, so he's been in the lounge room, strapped to that and getting him used to that. So we should have snow in the next couple of days. So 18 months, and he's ready to go. Does the odd tail grab, and he's pretty. He seems pretty coordinated. So we've got our hands full. There's no doubt about that. He's definitely not like his dad. I'm a bit of a wimp. I'm not too much of a risk taker. He seems just fearless. I guess most kids are, but he's definitely a bit different to me in that regard. So I don't know if we'll see him in endurance sports. I think he'll be a bit more of a coordination type athlete if he goes into sport, that is. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for taking time, bud. Always a pleasure to catch up. Congrats on Copenhagen. That was huge. And so Wyatt probably, did he have now he's old enough to understand what daddy does, right?
Yeah. He kind of got the clapping going on pretty good there. Yeah, he figured out how to do that. And I mean, it was obviously pretty special. I mean, we obviously in Europe, there's still a lot of restrictions, but Denmark have got their own rule. They've got their own bubble, and you pretty much live normally there. So we're able to go into Iron Kids and do the whole experience with him. And I mean, it was just a great trip, I mean, and it was funny after the race. So we, finished, did the presentation, etc., and was just walking back to the hotel, which was on the course. And I had him on my shoulders, just going along. Some lady stopped and said, "Cameron, that's just not fair. You don't even look like you raced. And you're out here with your son cheering everyone on, you just crossed the line 30 minutes ago." And but I'm sure, I guarantee you, I'm sure there was a lot of fatigue in there, but definitely having the family there, it makes you forget about all that, puts it all in perspective. And we had Fallon's sister was there as well. She was in town. She was visiting us, so we dragged her along. So, we had a bit of a tribe, and it was really special. So I really enjoyed that. I was glad with the cancellation of Kona, we at least got that this year.
And I think you were sporting the CAF visor.
I definitely had the CAF visor, or hat. I think I might have had the full hat.
Oh, you went with the full hat. I like it.
Yeah, it was a strategic. It was a strategic move. Well, it wasn't for that. It wasn't that hot, but there was definitely a lot of sun. It was a beautiful day, which is very uncharacteristic of Copenhagen. But it was obviously now with no touching, we don't have you have to go to special needs. You can't have people handing you stuff. So the hat was great because I could put a heap of gels in it and run out of transition with it in my hand and sort of deal with it later. And I could load up my pockets with some gels and things. So I only had to stop once for special needs because as you know, the visor is my weapon of choice. But just for practicality, I went with the hat to use as a little duffel bag as I ran out of transition.
Thank you, brother, for taking so much time. Always.
But I need a white one. You need a white one?
I
don't have a black one.
White hat?
Yeah. White hat. Yeah. White hat. Okay. Hat. Yeah.
On the way. We'll get that to you. Cam Wurf has been our guest, everybody. Again, Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Thanks, Cam. Appreciate your time.